so that he can join me up here, our guest speaker. So tonight's a speaker night, and he has Ryan. Okay, his name is Ryan. He was born in Washington D.C. So he's from Washington D.C. He lived and worked in China. He lived and worked in Japan. So he speaks fluent Japanese, a little bit of Chinese, and
all of which I'm forgetting quickly.
All right. Okay, and he mustered up his courage to leave his corporate job. I mean, just ditch everything, all right, and travel. And how many of us can actually do that? Right? I mean, we think about it, but do we actually do that? What I hear from many people who have gone on their travels for, you know, that kind of distance or a very long time, for them it's not just an outer journey out into the world, but it's also a journey into themselves. And today I'm very honored to have Ryan come share with us all his wisdom and whatever he got from all his travels from his 15-month sabbatical. So please join me in welcoming the Tallkid, Ryan Paugh. He's known as the Tallkid.
No. I'm going to sit so everyone can feel normal size. Thanks for setting the expectations so low. Wisdom about the meaning of life, Jesus. I'm not sure I can fulfill that, but we'll do our best.
Okay. Okay, so where do you want to begin?
Great. Well, first of all, thank you all so much for coming out and joining us. It's really interesting to hear each of you talk about what freedom means to you, and I found myself nodding and with each one of your comments. I think they're all correct, and hopefully, you know, as I talk about my journey, I can touch on some of those. I think the last one that Nadine mentioned was something that ties in very well to what I'm going to talk about, and that is that I think there's different layers. If you look at financial freedom, for example, and you look at freedom of thought, I think there's a difference in depth. And so as I went through my journey, I started out with more of a surface level freedom, right? No job, no work, no boss, I can do whatever I want type of freedom. But then as I sunk deeper and deeper into the journey, I found a new level of freedom, and it's something that a few of you began to touch on, but hopefully I will share a new idea of freedom that each one of you can think about and apply. So that's going to be one of my big takeaways that I share. So where to start? I guess just a quick background. Originally from the U.S., born and raised, but moved to Japan 7 years ago and lived in the Japanese countryside for 2 years. Having never lived overseas, been overseas, didn't speak Japanese. For some reason that seemed like a good idea. And I just parachuted into this tiny mountain village in Japan with 7 foreigners, 7 of us, and no one that spoke a word of English. And so that was the start, I think, of the journey. I lived in Japan for 5 years, moved to, working with Christopher, moved to Shanghai, lived in Shanghai for a year, and then took the plunge, jumped over the cliff, traveled for 15 months, and am now here in Singapore. So that's kind of the journey. Some of you mentioned an interest in understanding kind of my motivation leading up to taking the plunge, so I wanted to share a little bit of context that I think is relevant, and a little bit about myself, because I think what each one of us is after is probably different. And for me, I think the journey actually started when I was very young. I mean, I can remember being 6, 7 years old, and all of my friends were playing video games, and I was out looking up at the stars, and just, I had this, and I can still remember, like, very profoundly, I had these moments as a very young boy, like, there's something more, like I could feel it. And I think children have the ability to tap into these things, and I felt it very on, and it was very profound that there's more than what we're seeing. There's more than just the mechanics of what we can see, feel, and touch. And so that launched a lifelong journey of seeking truth, seeking understanding, relentless seeking. And you know, when I reached university, I chose to study philosophy, and I dove into Descartes and Nietzsche and Spinoza and Hobbes, and was just showered with writers and thoughts and perspectives, and was constantly trying to put all the pieces together and figure it all out. Right? All right, I figured it out. and there were times actually when I felt like I was getting very close, and then I would read someone, usually Nietzsche, who would shatter all of that in like a moment. And I had like very serious, emotional, desperate moments where everything that I thought I was building was shattered. And then I would go through a phase of like nihilism where nothing had any meaning, and then I would pick myself up and I would start to try to rebuild again. And this is something that I did in my free time, you know, constantly thinking about these things. So that's just a bit of context in terms of how this journey has started for me. It didn't start with the 15-month travel. It's been an ongoing journey. And when I got closer to taking the plunge, I would probably say around 2009, 2010, while I was working with Christopher, I was an executive recruiter with a small company in Tokyo, Japan, and we were helping big organizations find executives, right? And it was a lucrative business, and it still is, based on Christopher and I's conversation. It was a lucrative business, and you know, together with Christopher, found myself having a lot of success, being in the right place at the right time very early on. And you know, I was 28, living in downtown Tokyo, in the rowdiest, most fun part of Tokyo called Roppongi. For anyone that's been to Japan, I lived in Roppongi. No one lives in Roppongi. I lived in Roppongi.
Wow.
And I was working this corporate job, which I loved, which was a lot of fun. And I was making an exorbitant amount of money, more than I could keep track of. And I was enjoying the nightlife. And you know, I'd reached the place where, according to society, what society tells us, right? Get a good job, make lots of money, have your freedom, go out, have fun, all of these things, right? I'd gotten all of that, and according to society, I should be fulfilled, right? But there was a voice in the back of my mind that started speaking up and saying that there was something more, kind of reminding me of what I'd experienced at a very young age. Like, okay, you're enjoying these things, but there's a part of you that's not being fulfilled. And I think that's important as well when you start thinking about your own motivations. Like, are you trying to get away from something, or are you going towards something? You always want to be moving towards something. And so I moved out of my apartment in Shanghai, put all my stuff in storage, had a backpack that literally is just like a school backpack. I put my camera in there and like 2 shirts, like 2 socks and sandals, and I grabbed my passport and I just jumped online and I was just like, where am I going to go? And I booked a flight to Moscow, right in the middle of winter. December 1st, Shanghai to Moscow. And I was on the plane like, woo, here we go. What am I doing? This is nuts. I thought it was a great idea until I arrived at midnight, walking out into Moscow. I was like, this is like, whoa, I'm really in it now. Like, there's no, I'll never forget, like, stepping out of the train, like, onto the snow, like, and I just look up and there are these 6 guards, you know, just like they just look like Soviet officers, and they're all just smoking cigarettes, and they're standing in a circle, and they just look up at me. I'm like, oh my God, like, I'm in Russia. Like, what? So that was how the journey started. My goal, if I had to give any goal for the trip, I had 3 goals, and I wrote them down. No plans, no timeline, no budget. That was it. I said, right now, in this moment, at this age, at this point in my life, I'm going to live without those 3 things, and I'm going to live for this, however long this trip goes. If it's 3 months, 4 months, I don't know. I'm not going to decide. I'm going to try to let the trip decide, and I'm going to try to let it guide me instead of constantly trying to structure and plan everything. And so, what happened over the next 15 months, and it's really hard. I'm going to try to paint a picture, like big picture, and then I'm just going to share a couple very specific stories that tie into freedom and the lessons that I got away. Because as you can imagine, there's a lot there, and a lot that happened. And I experienced some very, very profound things that I feel I'm responsible to bring back in and to share with people. And so that's part of the answer to why did you come back? Because I very much feel that I was given certain experiences that are very meaningful, and I hope to pass those on. So just to give you a quick outline of like where I went. So Russia, back to China, if I can recall. China, I did about a month in each place. China to Burma, Burma to Thailand, Thailand to India, India to Bangladesh, Bangladesh to Nepal, Nepal to London for my brother's wedding. Great timing, right in the middle of my trip.
Great.
Wow. London to Peru, so I jumped down to South America. Hitchhiked down the coast of Peru into Bolivia. Bolivia, hitchhiked with a mystic across the border back into Peru. Got up to Machu Picchu. Went into the Amazon and studied with a shaman for 2 weeks. That's a whole nother story. Came out of that like in a different universe. Got on a boat that took me up the Amazon into Colombia. Loved Colombia, stayed for 2 months. Hopped from Colombia up to Mexico. Mexico to DC for Thanksgiving, Christmas. That's and then kind of back around to Asia. So that's kind of the route. The very first thing that I realized as I started to travel was all of the responsibilities and the structure and the schedules peeling off. And that was incredibly liberating, right? Being able to do what I wanted to do. And when I look back at it now, I think the whole 15 months was like a meditation, right? Like the first 5 minutes, your thoughts are still kind of rattling around, you can't quite get settled. And then the next 5 minutes, you're kind of like getting settled. And then you enter like a really deep state, and then you kind of come out of it. And actually, when I look at the 15 months, that's actually what I went through. Where the first 3 months, I was still wearing some of the irritation of society. Like, I gotta go to this place, and I gotta go to this city, and I was checking off boxes, and I was rushing. Like, why am I rushing? I have nowhere to be, but I'm still rushing. And I'm still thinking in the back of my head, like, I should be doing something more productive. And all of these influences that we have on us all the time, we're kind of rising to the top. The expectations, responsibilities, what society says you should do and shouldn't do, should say, shouldn't say. As I started moving into different countries that had different cultures and different rules and different traditions. In this country you can do this, but you can't do this. In this country, everyone's goal is to do this and become this. And as you start moving around, as I started moving around, I started finding that, well, I can actually just be myself. But that was a really profound notion. And one of you mentioned the freedom to be who you are. And so as all of that was kind of shedding off and melting away, all of the rules of society, I was becoming myself more and more and more, and I really felt that changing. And so that was one of the things that over time got deeper and deeper and deeper, and the voice got stronger and stronger. And I started trying to let that feeling kind of guide me. Like I was like, all right, I'm going to play around with this. I'm going to do like an experiment, and I'm just going to, like, regardless of what makes sense logically, I'm going to just kind of let this thing guide me around. Like, let's see, like wake up today, the hostel would ask me, like, how long are you going to stay for? I'd be like, I don't know. One night. Yeah. Like, okay. And then the next day I'd wake up and I'd check in with the voice, like, stay. I'm going to stay. Like, they'd be like, are you going to check out? Checkout's at 9 a.m. It'd be like 8 a.m. I'd be like, I'm not sure yet. I'll tell you, I have another hour, right? But I was experimenting. I was trying to move out of the intellect, what should I do, and planning and really trying to pass the torch to to this voice. And it didn't happen overnight. But I over time, 3, 4, 5 months, started to really, I was learning how to feel, I think. You know, I was making the journey from the head to the heart. Like really making the journey. I could actually feel it. And I even write down in my diary like, wow, I'm really experimenting with this. I'm really like just letting this voice guide me. And what started to happen when I did that? Oh, magical things started happening. I started meeting the coincidences that started surfacing were irrefutably majestic and magical. I started, certain people started coming into my day and sharing certain messages with me at certain times. It was very profound. And then I suddenly had this urge to go to Burma, and I'd fly to Burma, and I'd see that there's a Vipassana meditation starting the next day, but I'd already booked my flight out of Burma, so I just decided, the voice was like, no, just don't go to the airport. Just don't leave. You have to stay here. So I was like, okay, voice. I just didn't go to the airport. And I was like, this is crazy. I already paid for a flight out of here, but like, I'm going. I'm just following the voice. And I went, and I did the Vipassana meditation, and there I met someone very, very special who felt like someone I had known for multiple lives, and that person and I connected right off the bat, and they were like, I'm going to Thailand, do you want to come? And I said, sure. I went to Thailand, and this whole time, this voice is kind of guiding me, and I'm starting to see that there's meaning in all of these encounters, and there's reasons why I'm ending up in each place. I can't explain it, but the more I kind of let the voice guide me, the way I tried to explain it once to my brother is it's like all my life I've been walking through the woods, like trying to move forward, and all of a sudden I've just jumped in the river, and I'm just floating. You know, like I don't know where I'm going, but I know where I'm going. Do you know what I mean? Like, what? You know, how long are you gonna travel for? Where are you going next? It's like I don't know. But when I said I don't know, I said it with the most confidence. I said it like I do know. You know, and so I just kind of gotten in this flow, and I have journals and journals and journals about being in that place where I was like, wow, this is really, I feel like I'm really onto something here. This is a real spiritual experience, and I'll share one particular story that tied into that. So I ended up in Thailand, and I'm sitting at a restaurant all by myself, and the place is full. And people are queuing up, and they're coming up to the waiter saying, can I have a table? And she's saying, sorry, we're full. And they're turning around and leaving. Well, there's this one guy who comes up, and they say, sorry, we're full. And he just walks in anyway, just walks like right by the waiter. And he comes right over to my table. He's like, hey, can I sit with you? And I was like, sure. So he sat down, and I was in a different state at this time. I was really honing in and paying attention to all these little things that happen, coincidences, right? Someone just comes and sits at your table. I was really focused in on like, okay, I feel like there's a message in here somewhere, right? It was very clear to me. I can't explain it, but like you start to just know like when there's a message, like, okay, there's a message here. And messages come in many forms. And so he sat down, and within 2 minutes of talking, he's like, yeah, chit chat, and he's like, yeah, I'm here to do like Vipassana meditation. And I was like, all right, sorry, I see the connection. I was like, I just came from doing Vipassana. We talked for 8 hours. The place closed at like 7. We were still talking at 9. Me and this guy, his name was Alex from Holland. And it was the deepest, most meaningful conversation I've ever had with anyone in my entire life, hands down. I can't explain. We went like straight to the depths of each of our souls and connected, and we're having a conversation. I mean, I didn't know like what city he was from, nothing. We went straight to talking about energy, talking about being in the flow, and I started sharing this experience that I had been having on this journey, and he was sharing how he had similar experiences. And so I started traveling with Alex, and there's something that Alex brought into my journey and into my life that is one of my big takeaways, and I wanted to share that with you guys.